Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. It's Tracy here at TMB Arts, and today I thought we'd have a go at a painting I have done in acrylics. And I thought, well, why not have a go in watercolour and see how we go. So this is definitely my first time doing this one in watercolour, so it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. I've put a photo at the beginning of the painting, and I've put a photo of the line drawing, so if you pause the video where the line drawing is, you can copy that out. So yeah, let's see how we go. Today the brushes I've picked that I might possibly use, I'm not sure, is an 8 snap Princeton, a 12 snap round Princeton, a 10 snap round Princeton, an 8 Da Vinci Fit synthetic, a size 2 snap round Princeton, and a 3.0 snap. So whether they all get used or not, I'm not sure, but those are the ones I've pulled out to see. I'm going to pick a nice big brush to start with, because what we want to do is get the colour in the sky. We've got the sky here, we've got your horizon line, and then we've got sea coming through to a foreshore here. I could have drawn more detail in, but I didn't want to put more pencil on the paper than possible. So we're going to sort of wing it as we come down. But this is a good chance to do some sky work and some sea, and then see if we can get the skin tones right with the face. Skin tones in watercolours are quite difficult, I'm finding, so this will be a little bit of an experiment. I'm tossing up whether to mask her face off actually, and I'm quite tempted to. No, we'll do it the hard way, and let's see how we go. So first of all, I'm just going to get water on my brush, clean water, and we're just going to wet the sky area. And this is where you can be quite liberal back here, where there's nothing mattering too much. We can take it down past the horizon line a little bit, which will be good because it'll blend everything in. But then when we get to our figure, we need to be very precise about where we're putting this water, because the paint will run wherever the water is. Okay, so just be a bit particular about where you're going. And there, we hope we have got what we need to around that figure done. Okay, so that paint is nice and wet, and while we let that soak into the paper for a second, I am going to mix my paints. The paints we're using today are my set of Kuretake paints that I always use. Use whatever you have that matches roughly with the colours. Okay, so we're going to mix some paint, and I am going to start out with a very light blue. We're just going to do the sky at the top. Okay, and just let me get my colour chart and I'll tell you exactly what colours I'm using. Go. I have mixed some ultramarine blue and a little bit of the malachite for this colour. So we're just going to let this wash through here. If you look at the reference photo, there's lots of clouds and things, so we're just going to put this through. A little bit more blue, a little bit more water. A little bit darker down here. It's very light around her face, not the front, it's quite blue in the front, but around the back of her head is very light. We come through here, go down to the horizon line and let it run through a little bit. Soften it up down here below because you don't want a hard line. Now I also see in the reference photo tiny bit of yellow coming through, so I am going to grab some yellow ochre and just go through in here. And it might look a little bit messy, a little bit dirty, but it will dry really nicely. So let's just let that go through there. Okay. Take a little bit off. Blend it through. It's a very soft sky, so we don't want anything too harsh through there. But we have got quite a bit more blue down here. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue to the mixture. And bring that in down here. And remember also, the reference photo is just a guide. It's not what we're aiming for. It's just something for us to work from. Okay. Could get a little bit more malachite. Just in some of these areas where it is on the reference. But as I say, you do your sky the best that you can with what you have. That's the important thing. Remember, our goal on TMB art page is to make sure you get your paints out and have a go. Clean up where that's dribbled onto her face. Try not to get any water spots. Don't really want spots. It's not I love the effect, but not on this painting. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. And I'm going to move straight down to the sea, which is a lot of the same colours, but we've come in a little bit darker. There's a clear-ish line going along that horizon, so we can take some of that paint off. Not so much this end. It's where the sunlight is catching down through here. So I am going to try a little bit of Prussian blue, a very little bit of Prussian blue, because it's very bright, and I've just mixed that in with the other blues that I have here. So see, that Prussian is quite harsh. So just mix it in with the turquoise and the other blue so that we've got all those nice colours in there. Get that nice and ready. And then we're going to come in with a fairly clean brush. My water's getting a little bit grubby. And just wet down now. Mind that arm. Roughly around the dress, doesn't matter too much. And let's just get this nice and wet. You will notice your paper buckles a little bit with this, but that's okay. It'll dry flat again. As long as you've got it taped down, you shouldn't run into too many problems. And as long as it's fairly decent paper, this is not expensive paper. This is only it's 300 gram GSM paper, but it's not an expensive brand. I can't justify buying expensive brands of paint. So, but as long as it has got that 300 GSM, weight behind it. If it's taped down, it should dry flat once it's finished doing its thing. Okay, so we've got that nice and wet. We've got a nice transition coming through from the sky, okay, which is good. And don't forget, once this is dried, if you look at it and you think, I'm not quite happy with that, you can go back in and put another wash over it. See, it didn't matter how careful I was with that face, I still managed to get paint on. It's okay, clean it up. There we go. Just keep an eye on it, keep giving it a little wash now and then. Wash your face. Alright, so that lovely Prussian blue that we've mixed in with the others, we're going to bring that through in now. Into here. You can wait a little bit longer if you want to and let it dry out a bit more. But you see, it's just given us that little bit of definition between the sky and the sea. A little bit more blue. Okay. Now, my worst thing, my biggest thing I hate painting is sea. So I've set myself up for a job here because we're dealing with the sea. So we will see how it goes. But this is the thing. It doesn't. It just doesn't matter. The idea is to get your paints out and have a go. If we all sat there thinking, I can't do that, we'd never paint anything. And my sea doesn't have to look like the photo. As long as I'm happy with my sea, who cares? I'm sure nobody's going to come and knock on my door and say, well, you didn't paint that right. Take a bit more off through there. Okay, we're just letting that sun come through. A little bit more blue through here. Alright, well, it's very wet and that's fine. And then what I want to do in the very, very foreground here is I want to bring a little bit of sand in. I don't want her standing too much in the water. So a little bit of yellow ochre. And I'm just going to bring it through there. It just gives us an indication that she's in just the shallows of the water there. Okay, and we can bring more blue down into that if we want to later on. There's washes that we can do if we feel that way inclined. The photo has got her dress really in the water, and when it comes time to do the dress, we can get that bit of an effect. But again, as I say, it's up to us what we do with this. Now I am going to let this dry before I try and do anything else with it. So but you see, there's just little bits that you're not sure of. Just wipe them around a little bit. But then you start getting fussy and everything with it, and so best to leave it to dry. You can use a hairdryer right now if you want to, which is probably what I will do off camera because it's too noisy. Or you can go away and have a cup of tea, coffee, lunch, whatever your time of day is, and then come back and we will continue. Okay, we're back. It has dried. Paper has dried nice and flat. And now we can begin to work on other things. Now I'd like to get a light tone of skin in where it needs to be, and then we can work from there. So I have mixed together some red, some cadmium orange, and some Irulin yellow. A little bit of yellow in there because it has quite a yellow tone to it. So we will start with that and then build our colours up. For the dress, I have mixed some turquoise blue and some horizon blue together, and quite a watery consistency. So we'll see how that goes. Remember, we go from light to dark with watercolours. Now, I don't want to work wet with this skin tone because I don't want it to go everywhere. I want a little bit of control. So this is our colour. It looks very bright on the outside, but we're wanting this nice runny light consistency that's here. So it's very watery. All right, you can see how it runs. Okay, smaller brush. I'm using a 2 for this just to get started because it's not a big area that we are working on. They're small pieces. So make sure the paint is not too bright. Let's start on an area where we can test it out. And again, with watercolours, you are working from light through to dark, so we can add on to this, whereas if you start too dark, you can't take it away. So we're just gonna block in some colour here for the flesh tones. Always being mindful that this is the light you're putting in. This is the lightest tone you're going to see. This is what is being reflected as the lightest. So, as I say, if you go in too heavy, you're not going to get the effect that you want. Acrylics are the other way around. Acrylics, you can start quite heavy and put lighter stuff on top if you want to, or the same. I mean, when I work with acrylics, it's not always that principle. Sometimes I will put the light colour in like this with acrylics and work my way through to the shading. But generally, with acrylics, they say it is dark to light, and watercolours are light to dark. So you can see that look really orange in here, but when we get it on the paper, it's quite a nice flesh tone. It's not bad at all. Just want to tidy up this edge. Good. And now we'll just sneak through to her face, which is one of the lightest areas of all. So I'm gonna really make that a light coat of paint through there on her face. Now the last space that we have to do is one of the darkest tones of her skin. Well, one of the darker tones, her arm is too, but down this leg. Isn't the human body a wonderful thing to draw in paint? It has such glorious shapes. Well, I think it does. I've worked as a caregiver for most of my life, and the human body never fails to amaze me. It's always trying to fix itself and be amazing. Sometimes it can't, but it's always trying. Here we go. Alright, so down the inside of this leg is going to be a lot darker. Down the inside of this arm is going to be a lot darker. We have a dark line running through and across this arm. We have shading across the back of this shoulder, and then we have some indentations through the back here for her shoulder blades. So we will work to put all that in as we go along. But for now, that coat needs to dry. But what we can do is I'm going to step up to a little bit bigger brush here. I'm going to go for my Da Vinci 8. And again, I'm going to do the same thing, a nice wash, a nice wet coat here of our blue dress. So, what's going on with my brush? Got a thing here. Okay, so this is just to get an underpainting on, alright? Be careful of that arm. Remember, these things are still a little bit damp, so don't let them overlap or run together. Just do it carefully. So everywhere there is material for her dress, this is the lightest colour that we're going to see in the dress. Okay, we can put the shadows on afterwards. And if you think about painting the light, because all colour is light reflected, and that's what we're trying to paint. Trying being the optimum word. There we go. I'm going to carry on. You can stay down to a smaller brush if you wish. I just wanted to get the bulk areas on with this bigger brush. Just depends what you're comfortable using. I think it's good sometimes to make yourself use a bigger brush sometimes, because it makes you loosen up a little bit and not be quite so precious with things. But sometimes we need to be a little bit precious with things. Isn't that beautiful? Beautiful colours. Now this piece of dress on the front is lighter again, okay? It's the lightest of what we're seeing. So I'm going to make this very watery, very dilute. Go over the whole thing, mind that leg. And then looking at the reference photo, I'm going to clean my brush and dry it off. I can see that through here, it's almost white. So I'm just going to take that off. Just a little bit like that. Okay, we can come back in later if we want to, but that shading of blue around here should be very, very pale compared to this. But this is the lightest colour that we're going to see. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. So now that needs to dry. I'm looking at my sky and I'm actually quite pleased with it. I don't think it needs too much more. Quite happy with how that's all come out. My main focal point is the figure, so as long as the background is suggestive, then I'm happy if the figure remains the focal point. If you can hear that tapping in the background, it's my little doggies coming in to see what I'm doing. Mummy has moved her studio from the dining room to a spare room, and they keep coming to see what I'm doing because they're not used to not having me there. I bet plenty of you have got little fur babies that keep you company while you're painting as well. Now the body is dry. What I want to do is I want to try and decide now how I'm going to darken this up. Now it's tempting to put in brown or a darker colour to darken the shadows, but what I want to try and do is something I've been learning lately, because I'm always learning, is just getting a thicker consistency of this paint. So instead of getting this watery stuff here, all right, I'm going to dig into this stuff that's got more pigment. All right, it sits on the side of my palette because this is actually an ashtray. It's great for these things. All right, so we're going to try it and see how it goes. If we don't like the look of it, we can have another rethink. Okay, but we're going to start on the leg down here, and the shadow runs And don't forget, we can come back in again and do even a darker one on top if we wish. So this is like a mid-tone, because this side of her calf is actually lighter than this side of her calf, but I need to get this tone on and through to be able to have that effect. Okay, I'm just going to wet and clean my brush, and I'm just going to fuzz this line a little bit there. Just fuzz it a little bit. Okay, and a nice clean swipe down, because we want it to be there, but we want it to look natural. Okay, so can you see the difference? We've left, this is the lightest part of the thigh in the front here through by the light part of the dress, and we've taken this darker. We can come back in and make that darker again. So more pigment paint on my brush, and I'm now looking at this arm, and I'm looking at the reference photo, and we have it dark up in here. And we have it coming dark down here and into this hand. So we have a light piece coming down the outside of the arm there. Okay, other arm, and the lightest part of that arm is at the front. So we go from the wrist back to the elbow. Okay, and then down into the back of the hand and forward into that arm. Now there's a piece down the back that's lighter, a piece in the front, and the hand is lighter as well. Okay. Now I'm just going to soften it. Just a damp brush, not a wet brush. Get too much, you can lift it out. Clean brush, go back up, lift the paint off. Okay, good. More pigment on our brush, and we're going to look at this shoulder now. We have a dark piece coming down the shoulder and at the back of the shoulder and running down that arm, but the very, very front of that shoulder is quite light, so we want to leave that nice and light. So we will come down excuse me, we want to come down here, down the back. Okay, the front is quite light, and then clean the brush a little bit, and we're just going to bring that through there so that it blends, and we sort of get a merge of colour down there. Now more pigment on the brush again. And we have an area here that comes down into the spine. And we also have an area here around that shoulder blade. Okay, wet the brush, clean it. Let's merge this through. We want it to be there, but we don't want it to be too harsh. And the final place on this arm for it to be quite dark is in here. And that's good. A little bit in here. The face through here is quite dark. The rest of it is very light. Okay, and that gives us a jawbone. Okay, so we'll let her skin dry now. Try and remember, as I'm learning myself at the moment, that when we're painting people in skin tones, it's shapes and tones. It's try not to think of it as a person. Try to think of it as shadows and lines and shapes. over the years I've tried to paint people just in one go, and it hasn't worked, and I couldn't figure out why, but now I'm learning that this is the way to go about it. Okay, so going up a brush size. Alright, I'm going to get my blue dress paint, and I'm going to go back into my colour. I'm going to darken it up, and this is the turquoise blue, this one. So putting that back in there, mixing it with the colour that we've already got, so it's not going to be foreign, it's just going to be darker. Okay, so now this is the great thing about a little ashtray. You can wipe your brush on the inside like that, it's great. So, looking at our dress, and this may be too big a brush. I actually might start with a smaller brush and go down to my size 2 snap again. And we're going to look for the little wrinkles and ripples in this dress that we can make a little bit darker. So let's start at the top and have a look. We have a piece here in front of this that is very dark, and it comes through and runs a line down here. Okay, a little tiny piece in the front and some under these ruffles here. Okay, a little bit more paint, and even this brush is a little bit big. It's suggestions. Just remember, it doesn't have to be perfection. It is suggestions. Okay, we're very dark down in here. And on the inside of this, and the inside there, which gives you the ruffled effect through there. Come down in here, follow this line through. Just keep checking your reference photo and having a look for where you can see the darker colours, and just follow them through. Again, perfection is not what we are aiming for. We are aiming for practice. This is a study. So we've got very light pieces on the back of this dress, and then underneath those we have it quite dark there and through here. When you're doing your actual drawing of this, it pays to put these lines in if you can with your pencil. It gives you something to work from. Okay. Alright, so where I've put these pencil lines, I need to bring this down through. And remember, it's material, so it changes shape, changes contour. Okay, some of these lines are quite broad. And under here, it's darker because it's folding over her leg. I love that look of her leg coming out through the gown there. I think it's gorgeous. Okay, so more pigment, more blue, and we come in under here. Down through here. I'm going to include that line. Okay. And that's not our darkest of darks that's got to go through there yet, but that's our mid-tones. Alright, and you can by all means wet your brush, and you can soften things if you wish, like this. Soften it through a little bit if you feel you've been a bit severe with it, or you want it to just lighten up a little bit. You can blend it through like that, just so you get rid of that hard edge. Can look really pretty. But just remember when you're painting material that it does flow, and you want that feeling of movement through the fabric. But as I say, play around, cleaning your brush, going back, adding a little more to things, clean the brush, dry it off. Okay, so we've left some very, very light pieces. We've gone over with others. Now we're going to finish. Goes down in here as well. Comes through. Yeah, this piece through here, we need to darken that up a little bit, especially under there. So wash that out now, dry it off, and bring it down. Okay, so we create these lovely folds in the material. Now this piece out the front here is going to be even more challenging, because what we have to do is go lighter. So I have got another little clean palette here, and I am going to get a tiny touch of paint in there from the other palette. Alright, clean that brush, put it away. Back to my number 2, wet it. A lot of water. I want a lot of water in this. It needs to be really runny. So you can see the difference. It's the same colour, but it's very, very runny. Okay, let's see how this goes. Now, I almost, in fact I will, want to do wet and wet on this. So I'm going to wet this dress in the front here. Carefully, don't get the leg. Okay, so we've got some lovely wet and wet water there. I'm going to get some of this paint that's just barely pigmented, and where I've got the ruffle lines, we're just going to drop it and hope like heck we can get some nice little ruffly effect through here. See how the paint travels? I'm not going for exactly what the picture is doing. I'm going for a feel here. I want this to feel like lace. I want it to feel soft. Okay, I'm happy with that. We'll let that dry. Okay, now let's go back to her body again, which is dry. And I do want to almost change the colour a little I'm thinking it needs to be quite dark where I want to put the dark. And I'm almost willing, that's my dog making a funny little noise in the background, to add a little bit of burnt sienna to this orange. Let's see what we're going to come up with. Okay, I don't know if this is going to be any good. Let's try it together, shall we? It might not be. Might need to go the other way. Okay, we will start on the inside of this arm. Now, you don't need a lot of water in your brush. We need control. Okay, and we need it to come. And we need it in this hand. So we have quite a pronounced shadow there. Now I'm almost feeling that's working. It's trial and error. This is the joy of painting, and nobody, you know, and unless you pick up your paints and have a go, you don't learn anything. You can watch as many YouTube videos as you like, but unless you actually pick up the paint and the brush and have a little go, then you don't know. Okay, good. It's working out okay so far. All right, now this leg's a bit tricky. It comes down through here, comes through there, and down into this ankle, and down over the back of that foot. Just remember, you've got the mid-tones there, so you don't want to cover the whole thing up. Then we just get the brush, we wet it, we clean it, dry it off, and we soften that through there. Get a little bit more paint because it's very, very dark up here by this dress. Where it runs under there. But again, it's a soft shadow. So we want that. Okay. It's looking pretty good. Alright, so more of our darker paint. And we're going to come back up and find the darkest parts here in this shoulder. Okay, this line up here is very dark. Alright, clean the brush. And work it out there. And again. Clean that brush. And pull it through. Just softening everything. Because those shadows can be quite harsh, they're also very gentle, which is a strange thing to say. See, this one coming up the back of her arm is very harsh because it's a skin fold where the arm meets. Paint mixed up because I'm running out there. Gosh, I hope that comes out the right thing. Oh, it's my other account pinging for me. Right, so down in here and down in here, and again through this little fold in here. And we want some shadows here. Clean the brush, dry it off, and soften it in. but not this one so much. Good. I mean, generally, I'm quite pleased with how that skin tone is coming out. The important thing is that we're learning shades and shadows, different skin tones, without painting it all in like block. But now I'm going to get a little bit of Raw Umber Deep, this one, just a little bit, and I'm going to add it to that sienna mix, because what I want to do is I want to get a really dark indentation here on these fingers and this hand, coming up into this wrist there. And the other place I want really dark is in this elbow there. The other place I want really dark is coming up through here. A little bit of that paint through here. And just coming down this neck. Now if you're looking at the reference photo, you'll see why I've done all that. Okay, this is good. I like this, so we'll just smooth it in. Okay, it's given us an inside to that hand. And we'll just smooth this down a little bit. Good. Keep cleaning that brush. And just soften the edges. If you have a style of painting where you don't want to soften your edges and you want to leave it very stylized and leave the shadows as they are, then by all means do that. That's great. Whatever your particular style is, that's fine. Okay, so now we need the very darkest darks for this dress. And what I want to do is I want to take this colour, and I think I want to add, I think I'm going to add some ultramarine blue to this, and see what we get. See if that's going to be okay. We don't need an awful lot, but let's add some in here. Get a mix of that other paint. Don't want it to be foreign. We want it to be toned, but we want it to be a little bit darker. Okay, let's see how that goes. Now I am going to drop right down to one of my smallest brushes, which is a 3.0, whatever that is, 3-0. Alright, so we're just going to roll that little brush in there. And looking at the reference photo, I can see there are some points in here that are very dark. Now see, that's nice because although it's dark, it's bright. So let's just go with that. See, that to me doesn't stand out. It's not offensive to my eye. Which sounds funny, but it's a thing. So just where you see those darkest pieces for you, hey, that's enough. Dogs start licking their feet. The most annoying sound. Okay, I'm going to come up through here. In fact, dogs are amazingly noisy, aren't they, when they start doing stuff. Okay, we're just adding another whole dimension to this dress with this lovely colour that we've got here. I quite like it actually. Going a bit nuts with it. But it's okay. It's your painting. It's my painting. We can do what we like with it. Isn't it wonderful? It's wonderful to have that freedom. I think it is anyway. Yeah, a lot of times I think we feel, I'm going to go up a brush size. A lot of times I think we feel stuck because we have to fit in to something that someone else thinks we should be, or how we should paint, or how we should feel. And it's quite nice when you actually get the realization that that's not the case. It's not what happens. It's not what has to be. Yeah, I'm enjoying that colour very much. It's really adding to it. I don't know if you think the same, but I do. It's adding another dimension. Not so much the darkness, but a brightness almost, I want to say. Like a different fold in the material. Please, in your comments, let me know how you feel about things on this, because that's another way we learn. You know, you learn how different people see things and what they think. And I mean, it's important, yes, and it's important, no. It's lovely to find out how other people view your work, or, you know, things that you think, or whatever. It doesn't have to affect you. But it's nice. I mean, we sort of build a little community if we can say things. I'm going to be careful because I'm just getting carried away there now. So I'm going to wet this in front again, very carefully. I don't want to lift any of that paint that's sitting there. And I'm going to get some of this colour that we've just made, and very carefully drop it in through here. There's a few places on this front dress that are just lovely and ruffly, and just need that in here. There, very good. Okay, quite happy with that now. I think maybe there's one spot that I need to emphasise with a bit darker colour is coming down through here, because that piece there is folding over the top of it. So if we blend that bottom in now. Okay, that's good. Yes, you have to be careful that you don't get carried away like I am now. And again, you can always come back. Once it's dried, it'll be softer, and if you feel you want to, you can come back and alter that. Now we're going to look at her hair. I'm not too bothered about her face because I think we've sort of addressed that fairly well. Well, I am going to get a little bit of the darker colour that we mixed. And I'm just going to go in back here. There. And that is just to suggest that ear. That's all it's doing. The only other indent is around here. There's no eye to worry about. This is not a technical drawing. This is just fun with colours and shapes. Alright. So, what we're going to do now is I'm going to get another little palette. I work in several little palettes. This is a very tiny one. And we're going to look at her hair colour, and it's quite red in a lot of places. we could almost work with this and see where we go. Let's have a look, shall we? With our lightest colour, we could put this in here. Yeah, this will work. Okay, brush is too big. Get rid of that. Go down to my size 2. Get this orangey colour. And we're just going to put in the lightest shades that we can see. Okay, so the ones we put on top will be much darker. My dogs are now sneezing. Okay. And her hair, actually, that's the shape of her hair there. Alright, these bits are strands. So these bits will definitely be a lot lighter. And for strands of hair, I always like to use my rigger, my long liner. So I'll wet that. Roll it well in the paint. And roll it to a tip. And then now you can see why I like to use my long liner for this. There's just nothing else that compares. Now we've got hair coming here, down the front as well. Okay, so what this does, what this allows us is that we can put darker colours on top, basically. But that needs to dry. Now while that's drying, what we can do is work a little bit on around where she's standing. So we can wet this. Of course, you always make sure it's dry, and it has been. It's been drying for a long time now. And then we'll get some of this nice goldy colour where we'll put some little bit of yellow ochre in with the goldy colour. And I think we'll just drop it through. Underneath, and bring it sort of back away from her, allowing for a bit of shadow coming this way. Okay, so that's nice. I like that. I like that a lot. Our sea is looking very flat. As I told you, I do not like painting sea. It is not one of my favourite things, so I'm probably going to leave it alone a little bit for now. But that dress is coming up good. As soon as her hair has finished drying, we can go back in there. It's very basic painting. It's not a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination. But what it's allowed us to do is have a look at tone, have a look at doing wet on wet, having a look at doing wet on dry. Seeing what happens when we let paint run, learning how to do folds and tones, learning your value, things like that. They are quite important things. Well, they're very important things when you're doing any sort of watercolour, quite honestly. Let's see if I can just get a little bit of that. Just want to do a little bit more on her face here. That's better. That's better. And again, you can make her face as elaborate. You can turn her a bit if you want to. The choice is yours. It's up to you. But right now, what I'm going to do is go back to my long liner. And I'm going to get some darker paint. The raw umber dark again, mix it with a little bit of the gold. So we've gone to this. Okay, it's thicker. And when I look at the reference photo, I can see that this side of her hair is quite dark. Okay. And it's sort of all being swept around this way. So the reason we put the light colour in there is to let it shine through at the top. So coming through here we have a bun which is quite dark, and then it sort of goes off into strands. So you imagine this side of the head is coming around this way. I mean, you can just go crazy and have fun with this. Alright, now in the ponytail itself, a little bun on top, we have like a little dark area with the hairs coming out there. Wipe that brush off a little bit because we've got some little trailing hairs at the top here, which is quite nice. And we just want to bring that up through there, mixing it in gently. You just want to be able to see the undertones coming through. You know, you want to be able to see the difference in what you're painting. Now there's a piece on the side of her head that's very almost white where the sun's hitting it, and I have not put that in, and I'm not sure that I'm going to bother to try. Just going to put some darker pieces through the hair at the back. Make sure it looks connected. And just remember, every little layer that you do adds something else into the painting. I'm going to get my small wee brush now and clean it, and I'm going to mix this a little bit so it's not quite such hard lines through there. So it still looks like a bun, but it's not all lines. It just didn't quite look right to me. Okay, good. And the bits that are dangling around her face now should be reflecting the sun, so that's good. Okay, so other things that we can do, we can add to this in like with the sea and things like that if you want to. I don't know that I'm actually in the frame of mind to have a go at that today. I do just want to tidy that up through there. Okay, and as I say, you could do this in whatever colours you want. You could have her in a red dress or whatever takes your particular fancy. Finding some darker values in here. And this is what I mean, you can spend a lot of time fiddling around with things afterwards, thinking, you know, I'll add this or I'll do that. And that's the joy of art, isn't it? But the fact that we can do that. You can knock out a painting really fast and be quite happy with it, and then you can go back and fiddle with things for ages if you really want to. It's the joy of it all. The ruffle there where she's holding the material. Too dark. Okay, so what I will do now is take the tape off so we can have a decent look at it. Always pull your tape away from the painting. Never pull it in towards the painting, because if it does tear the paper, you'll tear it away to the edge. You won't tear it into your painting. It's a simple thing, but I've done it myself. I've been too quick to pull stuff off one time, and the tape had really taken tooth, and I ended up lifting the paint. It was most annoying. So always pull away from the painting. There's something so rewarding about taking that tape off and seeing a clean photo. Now, one thing I would probably add to that, looking at her now as she's all nice and clean, is maybe a little bit more darkness in here. There, that's better. It's just creating that shadow look a little bit more. Great. So now I will find my pen and sign my work. I'm not even sure of the... Hang on a minute and I'll have a look. It's the 27th today of March. So there we go. All done. All signed. And yeah, it was fun to do. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it doing more that way than doing it with the acrylics, which is interesting. So, wherever you are, be safe. Have a wonderful morning, evening or afternoon, or whatever the time of day. Just be peaceful and take care, and I will catch up with you next time. Don't forget, please, to like and subscribe. Ring that little bell and help me get my channel set up. That'd be wonderful. Thanks. See you next time. Bye.